Everything I share here comes from my own lived experience, my own memories, and my personal perspective as a mother who lost her son. What I describe is how I witnessed these events, how they impacted me, and how I understood them at the time. I am speaking only to my truth, my grief, and my recollection. Nothing more, nothing less. There are stories so heavy, they rewrite the shape of your life. My son's story is one of them. I have carried it for over 21 years, in pieces, in fragments, in the quiet places, and I am telling it now so I never have to tell it again. This is the story of what happens when a gentle soul falls into the wrong tribe. I've been waking up at 2:30 a.m., the hour they think my son died. It happens pretty much every night. And with my great-grandson Ronan having arrived just hours ago, that ache is sharper. A new life born into a lineage I'm cut off from. I'm not even allowed to see any photographs. The price of this forced, solitary prison sentence. Estrangement is a kind of ghost life. You hover around the edges of your own family while everyone else keeps moving. Maybe that's why I ended up doing something I haven't done in years. I went to Jillian's pages, her public Facebook, her real estate empire, her website, her Instagram, the brand she polishes like armor. The world my son married into, the world he tried to survive, the world that eventually destroyed him. Seeing it again, the gloss, the posing, the production value took me right back to the start, back to the boy who left Wisconsin in a tiny car I wasn't sure would make it to the state line, let alone Las Vegas. He left because he needed a fresh start, because he'd already lived through a grief most people never touch. Before Jillian ever showed up, my son buried his first child. Her name was Courtney Jo. I spent 7 months embroidering her quilt, a teddy bear sitting on a crescent moon, a quilt that was supposed to lay in her crib, not over the smallest coffin I'd ever seen. In the basement of that hospital, I saw my son, 20 years old, break in half. It was the only time I ever saw him cry as a grown man. His whole body shook. The sound was unforgettable. And then he had to keep going. He followed someone he thought he could trust to Vegas. He wanted hope. He wanted quiet. He wanted life to make sense again. When he first arrived in Vegas, he tried staying with someone he trusted. Chaos, screaming, drinking, drugs, a house filled with dysfunction. He didn't last long there. He'd already lost too much to live inside someone else's madness. And then she knocked on the wrong door. She was there to look at a piece of real estate. She apologized, looked at him coyly, turned on her heels, and walked away. And when TJ closed the door, he said to his roommates, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." And he did. He meant it with his whole heart. For a while, she made him feel shiny, polished, chosen, held up in her spotlight. He believed that light was love. But they were from two different tribes. She lived at full volume, high-octane energy, non-stop motion, image as identity. He was quiet, gentle, empathic, a deep-feeling man who needed silence to breathe. She needed an audience. He needed a moment to himself. Those two lives can only collide for so long before someone suffocates. I remember the rehearsal dinner so clearly. She stood and gave a perfectly curated, polished, practiced speech, 10, maybe 15 minutes long, every word chosen, every gesture intentional. It was pure performance. Then it was TJ's turn. He looked at her and then at us and said, "That's why I'm marrying her, so I don't have to talk." Everyone laughed. Some years later, the truth of that moment wasn't funny. He never had room to talk. He never had room to breathe. There was never any space in that marriage for his voice. TJ would come home from work and just want 30 minutes in his little office, just a moment of quiet. But Jillian's engine never shut off. There was no quiet, no pause, no air. That may work for people from her tribe, people built for speed and spotlight. But my son was not from that tribe. He was from mine. Stillness and depth and empathy. Wrong tribe, wrong rhythm, and wrong rhythms can kill you. Before they married, they had a deal. 5 years before children. TJ wanted to wait because of our family's mental health history. He didn't want to bring a child into the world unless he could give them everything, emotionally, financially, mentally. It mattered to him deeply. After he died, Jillian admitted to me she'd lied. She told him what he wanted to hear because she thought she could change his mind. She got pregnant twice. They lost both babies. TJ blamed himself. Of course he did. He carried guilt like a second skin. Little cracks in a marriage become fault lines when two people are from opposite worlds. She lived for image. He lived for meaning. She lived for motion. He lived for moments of quiet. He tried to keep up, but you can't outrun someone else's emptiness. And Jillian's emptiness seemed bottomless. She was building a new life, real estate, branding, being seen. He was building a home he thought would be with her. They built a house together, except that together was only true emotionally. Legally, the house was in her name. TJ had no credit when he moved to Vegas, so the deed was hers. That mattered later, a lot. The speed of her world began swallowing him. Her expectations, her need for constant admiration, her relentless pace, her engine that never stopped. He became a supporting actor in her life story, and eventually, even that wasn't enough for her. The affair didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of her needing to be fed, and him running out of ways to keep feeding her. He rarely drank. He'd learned from my alcoholism. He and his sister both did. So when his friends told me later that he'd been drinking heavily, I knew something catastrophic had happened. He had learned she was having an affair. Later, when we spoke of it, he asked me not to say anything. He was afraid Jillian would get mad. And the foundation of his world, already cracked, shattered. It wasn't that night. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a sudden decision. Weeks later, after the betrayal, after the emotional free fall, after trying to make sense of a life that had already hurt him too much, he bought a gun. He told Jillian one story. He told his friend another. And me yet another. But the truth is, he was never going to hurt anyone but himself. Gentle to a fault, self-blaming, never cruel outward, only inward. He called me on a Monday. His voice, I can still hear it. He was happy, truly happy, because Jillian had told him she was coming home. They were going to try again. He believed her. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. For that brief moment, he felt hope again. And she did come home. She told me later how it unfolded. They sat together on the couch. He leaned in to kiss her, and she told him it felt like kissing her brother. She said that to him, out loud, to his face. And then she left. Again. The last image the world has of my son alive, Jillian driving away, my son standing in the doorway of the garage, watching her pull out. That's the moment burned into my memory. That's the moment she left him with. That's the moment that finished him. She drove away. He stayed behind with the echo of her words. When she came home for the memorial service, she brought her best friend. Everything was a production. She'd made a DVD, photos of them, their honeymoon, music, a tribute entirely about her version of their life. She insisted everyone watch it. She stood in the front of the room and performed grief like a monologue. Everyone in that room knew what had happened. Everyone felt the hatred. Everyone understood she was the reason he'd been broken. But she acted like none of it had occurred. And there was the moment I overheard her talking to her best friend during TJ's memorial service, complaining that she'd spent $30,000 getting my son's teeth straightened, whitened, perfected, and what a waste it was now. She said it like it was an investment that hadn't paid off. The timing, the tone, the casual cruelty, it burned into me, because even in death, he was still being measured against her standards. At one point, she'd even tried to correct how TJ said his own last name, insisting he should pronounce it Montford. He told us about it himself, and it made no sense. Mountford was his last name, his identity. But it seemed it needed to be reshaped into something more suitable for image and status. I remember driving somewhere with her and her friend during that visit. We passed farmland beautiful Wisconsin farmland, corn, soy fields that feed families. And Jillian said, "I can't believe how much wasted land there is here." Wasted, as in worthless because it wasn't a building space, as in nothing matters unless it's profitable, as in food is invisible to people who live off image. Even in my shattered state, I remember thinking, does she not understand where her food comes from? But Jillian doesn't see land. She sees opportunity. She sees mirrors. She sees herself reflected everywhere. And then came the proof of everything I already knew. The episode of Toddlers and Tiaras. Season 3, Episode 9, Royal Essence. Her quotes were the truest window into her soul I'd ever seen. Years later, in that Vegas hotel room, she told me about the man she married after my son, James. She said she was going down one side of the strip. He was going down the other. Their eyes met, and she knew instantly that he saved her. That's what she said. He saved her. The house TJ was so proud of, the one they built together, was in her name because he had no credit at the time, because he trusted her, because he believed they were building a future. When she left, she sold it out from under him. He had 2 weeks to be out. 2 weeks to lose the only home he'd ever chosen for himself. That's what it means to be in the wrong tribe. You lose everything while they climb higher. Not long after he died, I received a letter in the mail, anonymously, a plain envelope, no note. Inside was the original approval for TJ's mental health appeal, approved after he died. He fought for help. He tried to get care. He appealed everything he could appeal. And I am almost certain, I can't prove it, but I'm almost certain, Jillian sent it, and I know why. To say, it wasn't my fault. He was defective. That's what it felt like. That's what it was meant to feel like. No comfort, no compassion, just image management. There's a part of this story I haven't talked about yet, not because I forgot, but because this was the part that still catches in my throat. Before he died, my son left a video and a note. It wasn't long, just enough to make his intentions clear. He wasn't confused. He wasn't unsure. He knew exactly what he wanted. He had just bought this car, a black Mitsubishi Eclipse. He was so proud of it, worked hard for it. And it made her happy, that sporty car. So it made him happy. That was the kind of boy he was. In his note, he asked for one simple thing. He wanted his sister to have the car. And he wanted Jillian to put $10,000 in a trust for his sister, a gift she could use when she bought her first home. Months later, my mother, my friend Mary, and I drove out to Vegas to do what he asked. Spread his ashes in the San Diego Bay, the ocean. We both loved the ocean. But when we got there, the car wouldn't start. It was a Sunday, she said. No help, no options, no tow, nothing. Except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like resistance, like a door being quietly but firmly shut. And when I opened the glove box and saw another man's name on the mail inside at the address in the driveway in which I was sitting, I knew exactly what had happened. He was driving my son's car, and she didn't want that car leaving her world. We ended up leaving Vegas without it. His sister never got the car. She never fully got the trust. She never got the gift he left for her. I never forgot that. I never forgave how easily his last wishes disappeared into her world. That car was my son's last gift to his sister. And it was just one more thing she lost that day. And the truth is, the losses didn't stop there. In the years after TJ died, the fallout didn't stop. Grief just didn't break my heart. It broke my life open, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold. I lost the home I raised my kids in, the one I paid for with my own money, the one where every wall had their fingerprints in the paint. When I sat across to the bank vice president to sign the papers, he looked at me and said, "Deb, you've got just $12.59 left in your savings account." And I looked at him and grinned and said, "Yeah, but I did it." That house on the corner of Park Street and Zoo Lane, it's a bed and breakfast now. Sometimes I drive by and remember. Sometimes I sit in my car next to the zoo, look at the house, and think of the kids there. I lost my business too. At one point, I had 22 consultants working with me. A whole company I built from nothing. Gone. I lost my car, my stability, and eventually I lost my daughter, and then my grandchildren. All of it. One by one, everything I love collapsed. And I can trace every piece of that destruction back to one place, Las Vegas. Back to a decision my son made when he followed someone he trusted, someone who wasn't a safe place to land, someone drowning in her own addictions and chaos. He had to jump, and when he did, he found roommates. He started over. But that was the moment the ground shifted again. When Jillian knocked on the wrong condo door. She had just graduated high school, had $10,000 in the bank, and was looking to buy her first place. She ended up buying the condo right next to his. And from that moment on, the rest is history. And that's the landscape I was standing in when everything else began to unravel. She's still at it, all public, all curated, all about her. Her real estate empire, her photos, her third marriage coming up in Mexico, another production, another brand moment, another spotlight. To my knowledge, she's never once publicly acknowledged my son's death. But I did see her post about a stranger's suicide with performative compassion, because her life is performance. because image is oxygen, because she lives in a tribe that feeds off attention. And here I am, 21 years later. My great-grandson has just entered the world as I write this. A baby I will never hold. A life event I will never have been a part of. Because the damage that began with Jillian didn't end with her. It rippled, it spread, it infected everything. My son died. My daughter disconnected. My grandchildren are strangers to me now. The lineage that should have been mine has been severed. I am the ghost of my own family. Everyone else kept living. I got left behind. This is what happens when you end up in the wrong tribe. Not just socially, not just emotionally, not just financially, spiritually. Because tribes shape the air you breathe. They shape what you think you deserve. They shape what you believe love looks like. They shape your sense of home. My son walked into a tribe that ran on status, speed, performance, and image, and it swallowed him whole. He tried to keep up. He tried to be enough. He tried to be shiny enough to be worthy of her spotlight. That kind of tribe doesn't want you. It wants what you can reflect. Once you stop reflecting it, it replaces you. This is the image of the life she projects publicly, the polished, high-energy world my son married into. This is the world he tried so hard to keep up with. He was never meant for that world. And that world never cared if it destroyed him. The last image of him alive was her taillights leaving. The last truth he ever heard was her saying the kiss felt like kissing her brother. The last night he lived, he was alone with the emptiness she left behind. That is the cost of the wrong tribe. So here I am, 21 years after losing him in the early morning hours following my great-grandson's birth, living in the shadow of a life that should have been whole. There's a straight line from Jillian to TJ's death, to the long, grinding collapse of my family, to the ghost life I live now. That may be hard for people to hear, but it's the truth. It's not vindictive. It's not slander. It's not exaggeration. It's my lived experience, and it's his. For 21 years, I couldn't tell this story because speaking it feels like tearing myself open, because grief this deep doesn't have language half the time, because I didn't want anyone accusing me of bitterness or vengeance or rewriting history. But the truth is, the person who rewrites history is her, who posts stranger suicides with public compassion, but never once acknowledged my son's death, who curated a DVD tribute that erased the affair, the abandonment, the real story, the truth, who built a brand on gloss and glitter and left my son in the garage doorway with emptiness in his chest. This isn't vengeance, it's testimony. This is the truth of what it cost him, and what it cost me, and what it keeps costing, even now, as Ronan has just entered the world. And so I am telling this once, exactly once. I will not retell this again. I will not reopen these wounds again. I will not piece this together a second time. Everything you've heard here, every detail, every quote, every last image of my son alive, this is the record. This is the testimony he never got to give. This is the truth of his life, the truth of his death, and the truth of the tribe that destroyed him. And this is the truth of the woman still out there, polishing her image, while I'm living in the aftermath. I am telling this because my son deserves to have his story told, because he was gentle and empathic and kind and thoughtful, and one of the most tender-hearted men the world could have ever blessed. He deserved a better tribe. He deserved a better life. He deserved a future. He deserved to meet his children and his grandchildren. He deserved to meet Ronan. Instead, I am here, speaking the truth he never got to speak, holding the pain he never got to heal, and saying the words he never got to say. This is what happens when you get into the wrong tribe. Sometimes it can kill you.